That means we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us for today's event. We are going to be making smarter business decisions with Sage Data and Analytics. So if we can, go ahead and get started. Rich, you are sharing your screen. There we go. And if we can move on to the next slide, please. We're just going to address a few quick housekeeping items. Perfect. So this will be around a 30-minute presentation. We'll be then doing a demo of Sage Data and Analytics, and then we'll follow up with a Q&A at the end. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please submit them through the question box just as they come to you, and we will address them at the end. And then, of course, tomorrow we'll be sending you a recording of the webinar in the follow-up email that you will receive. Next slide, please. Great. So if you don't know, I'm Kelly Pitt, Vice President of Customer Success at Brainsell, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. Also joining us is Rich Ecker, who is the North America Pre-Sales Lead over at Zap. Hello, Rich. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Of course. All right, moving on. Okay, so we have a few poll questions that we'd like to go ahead and start with. First and foremost, where would you like to order your lunch from? So please select one from the list there. And as soon as we have everybody's response, we'll move on to the next question. Okay, it looks like that's it for question 1, I think. Perfect. Okay, question 2, which products do you currently use? We've got Sage 100 or 300, Sage Intelligence Reporting, an ERP that's not from Sage, or other than Sage data sources, so CRM, CMS, marketing automation, etc. Okay, and we can move on to the next question. Which of the following would allow you to make smarter business decisions? You can choose more than one here. So it can be better tools than what you're currently using, access to more data than just what's in your current Sage ERP, if it was easier to give more staff access to analytics and reports, or if you just need help everywhere. Perfect. And then the next question, which of the following, oh no, that was the same question, sorry. I think we can move on to the next one. Or was that it?
I believe that was
that's it. Okay, all right, well, thank you all for participating in the poll. And I think we are ready to move on to the next step, which is for Rich to please take it away and show us the magic of Sage Data and Analytics.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Sure.
So before I start describing Sage Data and Analytics, I think it makes sense to talk about some common challenges and why does Sage Data and Analytics even exist. So number one, what we hear from a lot of our customers is that building reports against Sage 100 and Sage 300 is time consuming. It's not an intuitive process. There's a lot of manual things that need to be done, whether it's Crystal or Excel. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to eliminate that kind of timeliness? We've heard desires that, a lot of the Sage ERPs, they are tied to an on-premise database, which makes it difficult to view that data when you're away. So wouldn't it be nice to be able to access that data anywhere and be able to report on it? We've heard that, there is so much data that goes into the ERP, but people struggle getting to all that data in a meaningful way. The other things that kind of people allude to is that there always is the need for building out custom kind of KPIs, and there's just a better way, and people are always looking for sort of better ways to manage your operations, whether it's operation type reporting or just better ways to analyze your financials. So all those kind of challenges, as well as and I would allude to one that's not really described here, and I think, Kelly alluded to that, and one of the questions is being able to not just report on Sage data, but be able to report on data that's outside of Sage. And that's really what Sage Data and Analytics aims to do, is solve a lot of these challenges. So let's dive in a little bit. So at a very high level, what Sage Data and Analytics is it's an all-in-one BI and reporting solution. And so what that means is that we can pull all the data from your Sage ERP, bring that into a data warehouse where we automatically build and maintain that data warehouse. And what we then do is we serve up pre-built dashboards and reports against that. That's one aspect. The second aspect is that we make the data coming from your Sage ERP in a business user-friendly way. And so what that means is that any person that has any knowledge of what they want for reporting, whether it's they want an AR report, a sales report, procurement report, we organize all that data so it makes intuitive sense, where I don't need to know technical jargon. I don't need to be a database expert. All I need to do is have familiarity with the business and understand which business metric that I need. And so again, quick summary, we are an all-in-one BI solution where we can get dropped in and build out this data warehouse and serve up analytics within hours. Now, there's a couple things that I would say that set us apart from other solutions. There are non-Sage affiliated solutions. And these non-Sage affiliated solutions, some of them are fantastic. If we look at, say, a Power BI and a Tableau, they're very, very, their visualizations are incredible. But where we help out and what we really do well is what's called this automated data management. And again, to kind of add on to it, to build out a data warehouse and make the data coming from your Sage ERP in a useful and business-friendly way to do all that kind of work, that can take weeks or months to have someone be able to be an expert against the database, know exactly which tables to pull sales data from, inventory data, purchasing data, have all that information get related, build out calculations against that, do all sorts of transformations, build out this data warehouse. All that can take a long time. So what we do is we have a pre-built solutions for these Sage ERPs. So again, we already have done all the legwork for knowing, okay, here's where the sales data is, here's where the GL data is, here's where the salespeople, items, customers, data, all that information resides. We know exactly where to go. We know how to relate it all, and we automate that process. So that, I would say, is one of our biggest value propositions, is that we have a model that is specific to your Sage 100 and Sage 300 ERPs. We talked about a little bit that we have out of the box calculations. I think it's on the order of magnitude of about 250 calculations that are not necessarily part of your Sage ERP. So common reporting needs, you need to do turnover ratios, you want day sales outstanding, you want some financial like leverage or liquidity ratios, we're already bringing those as part of the solution. I mentioned that we are live in hours, and when we get deployed, It takes less, within one day, we will have a full functioning data model against a customer's environment. Now, I always put up a caveat, hey, doesn't mean that you're implementation ready. Implementation usually is within about, I would say, averaging about 40 hours. And the only reason why we take a little bit longer is to customize sort of the chart of accounts and also we do a lot of validation and enablement as part of that implementation. But the default data model usually gets stood up in hours. Other things that set us apart is that we make it easy to migrate from ERPs and to combine ERP data. So whether or not if you have mergers or acquisition situations where you need to merge maybe two different ERPs, and maybe one is not even a Sage ERP, we help with that process and we make it easy and intuitive. If you're looking to upgrade your ERPs to one other kind of, or you're looking to just merge any of your sort of ERP data, we make that process simple. The other thing that, again, I would mention here, you can see it in the slide here, is that we make it incredibly easy to bring in other data sets. So if you have data that's in, say, Salesforce or some other CRM solution, or you have, maybe you have a warehouse management system, or you have a ticketing system, any other kind of other systems, could be a database, Excel files, even could be data that is only obtained by connecting to a web API. We can connect to that. And we can bring that in and report that on with side by side against your Sage data. And last but not least here, what we do, we do plug seamlessly into Sage 100 to 300, but we're automatically keeping everything up to date. So it's just an automatic process. As data flows into Sage, we will behind the scenes process the data and keeping everything currently. Now, we do refresh the data overnight. We can also configure this to be configure this to be even more quicker if you need it to be. And we have some customers that say, hey, it's month-end financials. We need the financials to be updated, hourly. We're able to accommodate a more frequent update cycle as well. And so, yes, I know some people will say, hey, but wait a minute, that's not real-time data. And I would say, yeah, you're right. It is not real time. And the reason why we take this approach of having a data warehouse and processing that way is because when you run the reports, they are instantaneous. There is no delay when you're running these reports. You will see as part of the presentation that it takes within a second, these reports are running. So we keep the load against Sage very low, and we provide a very optimal reporting experience. Okay, so that's what I wanted to cover off in terms of what Sage Data and Analytics is at a high level, what sets us apart. Let's actually see it. Oops, and let me switch over. No, I did not open my link. I thought I had it. Okay, so bear with me for 1 second. All right, so with Sage Data and Analytics, there's two components that I'm mainly going to go over. The first side of what I'm going to show you is what is coming out of the box. I mentioned that, hey, this solution stands up within hours. I want to show you what you get as part of that default implementation. What can you expect out of the box? Which reports? And we'll look at some financial reports, we'll look at sales, and if we have some time, we'll look at some of the inventory and procurement. There's a lot of reports and dashboards that are in here. We don't have time to go through every single one of them. So I'm going to give you sort of that high level view and kind of touch on some of the key ones. Keep in mind, everything that I'll showcase with our out-of-the-box analytics can be customized. So that means from the way the chart looks to the data that's in there to the way the calculations are done, everything can be customized. But again, so we'll go through the out-of-the-box analytics, and then the second part of the presentation, we'll go over what is not out of the box. How can you leverage Sage Data and Analytics and build out your own report? And we'll also look at, we talk about connectivity. We'll also touch on that last part, as well as what other data sources can we connect to. All All right, so let's dive in. So again, the first part is looking at our out-of-the-box analytics. Now, I'm logged in to our web platform. This is something that I can access. I could use my phone, I could use a tablet, and I could be anywhere on this. This is connected to the internet. You'll notice that I'm in a Chrome browser to access this. Now I'm going to go ahead and maximize this just to kind of focus in the demonstration portion of this so that you're not seeing all my crazy bookmarks and all that, but let me go ahead and kind of walk you through. So you'll notice that we organize our reports based on different subject areas. So there's financial, inventory, procurement, and sales. When I dig into finance, you notice that there was a number 4. That means that there's 4 entities below it. So one of those is a dashboard. There's 3 folders here. You can dig into a payables, and I have some more reports and folders here. But in every area, we have a high-level dashboard. So we're going to start off with that CFO dashboard. And right here, this is something that turns on upon implementation. So what do we get? We get information that tells us how our business is doing financially. And across the top, I can see all these metrics that gives me a little glimpse in terms of where the business is financially. I can see what my sales are, my margin, my profit, AR, my AP. I can see what my liquidity is, my quick ratio, and my leverage ratios. All this information, so at a glance I have that, and then down below I have some information that kind of expands upon what you're seeing there. So I can see what is my margin and my net sales, my cost of goods sold over time. How's my accounts receivable? How does that compare to last month or last year? Operating profit, how is that trending? How's my leverage and liquidity ratios trending? So all this information kind of gives you a little bit more details across from what you see up at the top. Now you'll also see I have some filters here. So these filters are there by default. So if I come in here and if I want to run this for, say, July, I can click on July. And now you'll notice the report refreshes to July. If you have multiple companies and you want to have one combined financial view of all your companies, Sage Data and Analytics will automatically merge all those companies' databases for you. And so then if you wanted to focus in on just one company, you could come in here, choose which companies that you want. Right now, we're going to just keep it for all. Now, with Sage Data and Analytics, I mentioned everything here is customized. So I could change the presentation of this chart. I could have different metrics. And keep in mind, what we've found with our is that this provides a great starting template. So then what you can do is you can cross out, hey, I don't need this, or I need to change this. Because sometimes requirements gathering can take quite a while. So what we do is, here's a starting template, just figure out what you want to keep and what you want to change. But let's dig a little bit deeper into this. So there's a lot of interactivity that you're going to get with Sage Data and Analytics. If I'm looking at this gross margin over time, and I want to see a little bit more information, I can hover over this, and it's going to tell me what these details are, or I can interrogate this. So I can see January is a low month for margin. I can now get down to the week view, and it looks like this week is particularly low. I click on that, and now I'm at a day-by-day view, and I can see, oh, looks like this particular day has an issue, something that I could investigate. I could double-click that even further to get into the granular details of what makes up those numbers. I can get back up if I need to, so just by using the navigation here. And now let's say that I'm this financial manager, I'm looking at this information and I see, I have my margin data over here, but I want to see a little bit more financial details, and I want to see some expense information as well. Well, there's built-in navigation here that allows you to go to sort of the next logical report. So if I'm looking at margin, maybe the next logical step that I want to go to is the income statement dashboard. Now what you'll see here is I have a P&L here on the left, as well as some profitability metrics here on the right. And how do we compare, month to date, quarter to date versus last year? We can see what our profitability is against budget on margin, profit, and net profit. Key thing about this budget could be sourced from data from your Sage system, or it could be external. If you have data that's sitting in an Excel sheet that is your budget, you could bring that budget in here and we can report on it side by side. Now, again, with with SD&A here, we have this P&L here. This P&L is highly customized, or it can be highly customized. Let me rephrase that. So this is a template. So the structure of this this comes out of the box, but you're able to group the accounts the way that you want. You're able to put in drill throughs the way that you want. So if you want to collapse or expand cost of goods sold and see all the cost of goods sold accounts, you can. If you want to introduce your own calculations, you're able to. There's a lot of flexibility with how you can build out your financial statements within here. But the native thing that you're always able to do is you're always able to get down to the details of anything that you're looking at. And this is where we've had a lot of success, is delivering trust, meaning that everyone that looks at these numbers wants to trust these numbers. So how do we ensure that people can trust these numbers? They can go in and say, you know what, I want to interrogate, say, rent expenses, right? By double clicking on that, now what I'm going to have is a line item transaction view of exactly what makes up that $40,000, right? And so this is GL transaction line level details that are coming from your Sage ERP. Now this view, you see that there's a set number of columns. This can include as much detail or as little detail as you need. This is all customized based on your needs. From this point on, you can also elect to say, you know what? I have this information, I got down to these details, now I want to export this. I can export this in a PDF or even in Excel if I wanted to. Going back up, could interrogate another value. So if I want to look at all the sales data for a particular month at a GL transaction line level detail, just double click on it and there's those details. So again, you always can get from a high point and summary level data right into those details. All right, so going back. So now we're back at the CFO dashboard and we can go ahead and kind of look at some of the rest of this as well. And so if I'm looking at this CFO dashboard, maybe me as a financial manager, I could come in here, I see my accounts receivable, I click on my gauge, and now I want to navigate to something that's more AR centric. And that really is built to handle managing the accounts receivable portion. And that's what we have here. So we have an AR specific dashboard. This tells you at a glance what's open, what's overdue, what's your average days overdue. We have aging by buckets right up here. We have which customers have the most amount due from an overdue and a current standpoint. We can see what is our average days to pay and are we trending in the right direction. Our collection effectiveness. We can see and you'll see that there are some additional metrics here. And again, these are examples of some of the metrics that are not coming out of your Sage ERP. What we're doing is we're using the data and we're building those metrics for you so that you can report off of these. And so you have examples of these like best possible days, sales outstanding, collection effectiveness. And again, if you ever need a clarification in terms of how these are calculated, I can hover over this information and I can see exactly the details that make this up. Now with our accounts receivable, an AR manager could come in here and they could say, hey, you know what, this is information, this is good information, but I need more of an operational style report that gives me all my customers and I want to look at all their customers and what's outstanding. You can navigate straight to that from here. And you'll notice that there's a related report on this gauge. I click on that. And now I have a customer by aging bucket across the top. Now I could go ahead, look at one particular customer. This is going to give me a little bit more details. Or I could say, you know what, let me sort this by our worst offenders. And if we're working the 91 to 120 days late bucket, here's our worst offenders, and here's the amount that these customers owe. And again, I mentioned that you have a level of trust with the data. I can dig into these details to see the exact transaction line level detail of what makes up those amounts. Want to remind everybody, This turns on upon implementation. This is not something that you're building. This is part of the platform. Now, you can customize and tailor this to your needs, but again, this is your starting point. You're not having to build this. If I go back up to the CFO dashboard, I have a similar kind of way of working with accounts payable. You'll see a similar sort of style dashboard where we're looking at vendor data, what's open, what's overdue, your average days to pay, which vendors you're overdue to. So you get this as well. So your accounts receivable, your accounts payable, there's a lot of information. These pre-built dashboards already help solve a lot of those needs. Now, we focused mainly on the financials. Now, there's other reports and other things that we could dive into. You notice that there's more financial statements that I could pull up, a balance sheet, trial balance, etc., cash flow statements. But what I want to do now is I want to go up one level here, and I want to showcase a little bit on the sales side too. And you notice that there is a set of folders on sales. I could go into orders and I can see some detailed report, sales order reports if I wanted to. But just as with finance, there's always these high level dashboards as well. So there's a VP of sales dashboard, and think of this as more of an executive sales dashboard. And this is, hey, really meant for that executive to get an at a glance, what's going on with sales? Where are you selling? Who are you selling to? What's your customer stats in terms of what's our average sales per customer and average margin? Where's margin coming from? How are we performing versus last year on a quarter to date and a year to date situation? And then what's our sales trend? So again, all this kind of comes out of the box. The key thing that we always see a lot of customers is that they go ahead and they add in their own filters across the top. So again, you can customize the filters that you're seeing here. Right now, we're looking at all companies, all items for a particular month. This can all be heavily customized based on their needs. Now that's more of a high level dashboard. We also have a little bit more of a detailed dashboard. And so you'll see, again, you have some selections across the top, but you're also getting information down here that tells you where are you selling, who are you selling to, who's your largest producers, and what items are you selling most of. We have that sales trend over here, but we're also giving you some other information too. We have this chart here that tells you how are you delivering to your customers. Are you delivering on time? Are you delivering in full? We have a detailed sales invoice analysis that allows us to see where our margin is coming from. We have a sales order analysis that lets us know what's outstanding from a sales order perspective, as well as what's on back order. Now, there's a level of flexibility with all of these dashboards. And as an example, if I want to narrow in on the US and I want to see data that really pertains to the US, I can click on that. And now everything's going to refresh so that I'm only looking at data that pertains to the US. I could do the same for customers or sales reps, and it's only going to be their data that populates. Now I have the ability to come in here. I could use these filters here as well. So if I wanted to just narrow this down to say one sales rep, instead of looking at an aggregate sales view, now we're just zeroed in on one particular sales rep. And there's that view. Now, I brought up this view not to just highlight, hey, we can filter based on sales rep. The reason I bring this view up is that with Sage Data and Analytics, you have the ability to lock down your data the way that you want. What that means is if you want to have one dashboard that serves all the data to your sales manager, but it only shows data that's relevant to your sales rep, you can achieve that with Sage Data and Analytics versus having multiple reports. So you could set up Sage Data and Analytics in a way that Gary Cox is only ever going to see their sales data. So when they access this same sales dashboard, this is the only data that they would see. That is an option. All right. So going back, let's see, let me just check the time here. We're at 1:30 here. Okay. I will very quickly just show kind of one other set of analytics here, which is on our purchasing side, to just kind of showcase the fact that, look, we're not just doing financial reporting, we're really supporting a lot of different areas within the business, including your purchasing side, and not just from an AP standpoint. So if we look at our purchasing, we can tell you, what are you spending? What's your purchase price variance? Again, additional calculations that we're adding in to the ERP. So we can tell you if you're spending more than what's going on in the PL. We can tell you what your vendor's performance is from an on-time and in full perspective. If there's any returns, we can tell you which vendors you're spending the most on, what items you're spending the most on, which locations are spending the most, and what you're spending over time. Now we also have this vendor scorecard down here that kind of pits all your vendors against each other, and it shows you, which vendors are really performing better than others. So again, quick reminder, all this purchasing data turns on upon implementation, along with those other reports and analytics that I showed you. So that's what I really wanted to showcase from an out-of-the-box analytics standpoint. We showcase we went through our financials, our sales, or procurement. There's many other reports and analytics that are there as well. Kind of just gave you a quick glance at what is out of the box right now. But now I think it makes sense to talk about what's not out of the box and how do you leverage Sage Data Analytics to build out some of your own content. So that's what I want to dive into now. All right. So we're going to get out of this view, which this view, by the way, is a consumer view. This is really meant for the end user, not anyone that is building reports. Now we're going to switch over to the designer view. And this designer view is really meant for, say, the power user. And this is someone that is building reports, maybe building dashboards, customizing those dashboards, maybe customizing the data that's coming in. That is who this is intended for. Now, I brought up this screen here. There is a lot of useful content here that helps that power user get up to speed. And we have these packaged training modules that have built-in videos that makes it incredibly easy to become experts on Sage Data and Analytics. And so you'll see that there's a good amount of stuff here. Now, to get started, if I want to start building a report, let's start doing that. So if I come in here, you'll notice that when I click on this, this is an easy process, and you'll see that we have the ability to build out a chart, a table, a dashboard. I have some other options here, but we're going to mainly look at sort of the table and the chart. And let me switch over here. Okay. Now, this is sort of the starting point for building a report. And what I want to showcase here, and I want to pause here for a minute because I mentioned that our automated data management is one of the strongest selling points of Sage Data and Analytics. And what that means is that we're mapping the data automatically in a business user-friendly way. And proof of that is what I'm showcasing here on the right-hand side. So again, I don't need to be an expert on Sage 100, Sage 300. I can come in here into Sage Data and Analytics, and now all that data is neatly organized for me. So if I'm looking at our Sage, if I'm looking at data from Sage 300, I can come in here, choose our measures. And now all my measures here are neatly organized. So if I wanted to start building an accounts payable report, I have all these metrics already ready, predefined, pre-built, ready for me to start building. If I wanted to build something around accounts receivable, all these metrics already there for me. Same with all these other areas as well. So, we have sales data, there's purchasing data, etc. Now, we don't just do that just for Sage 300, we're doing that, and you'll see it's very similar to what we're doing on Sage 100. And so if I click on measures, again, similar look here, similar metrics for AR, almost standardized between both of these. Same with sales invoices. There's all these kind of common elements between both of these. And so again, I don't need to be a Sage 100 expert. I don't need to be a Sage 300 expert. We've already organized all the data in an intuitive fashion. So now if I want to start building a report, and we're going to use Sage 300 for this example, but again, it doesn't really matter. I can come in here, and if I want to start building a sales report, I can just drag and drop what I need over. So here's our sales invoice amount, right? I could then come down here and I could say, you know what, I want to look at this by, let's do by customers, right? And so there's our sales amount and there's buyer customers, okay? Now I could come up here and I could say, you know what, I want to add in some filters or some selections as well. So I want to give the ability to specify dates. So I could say, you know what, we'll add in our date. We want to focus in on, say, 2020, okay? I could add in company. I could add in employee. All these are just literally just drag and drop the things that I need over, and I can make selections on what I want to include or what I want to exclude. Same with employees. If I want to narrow it in on one or two kind of key people, I'm able to do so. So it's easy. So again, I show this briefly. If you can work an Excel pivot table, you can start building reports in here. It's not a hard process. Now, there's a lot of advanced functionality that you can do within this platform. We'll touch on just some of those elements. The point is, we're pre-building this data model that makes building these types of reports very simple. And so, you know, you saw we just have a sales by customer for the year 2020. Now, if I want to add in some calculations, you're able to augment this too. And so maybe what we want to do is we want to have a comparison to the previous year. Now, I didn't mention this before, but I think another strong selling point of what sets us apart is our time value functions. What that means is if I need to do comparison to different time periods, sometimes you're running multiple reports, or it's a lot of customization, you know, whether it's an Excel or some other reporting tool to get you side-by-side data of, hey, here's last year, last month, last 6 months. In Sage Data and Analytics, it's 2 or 3 clicks. And let me show you here. So if I wanted to add in some time functions, right? And I want to have a comparison, I don't know, say to last year, I can come in here. You notice that there is a time folder here. And there's these period to date, parallel period, all these kind of pre-built functions for us. I can go into this period to date and I can say, you know what, I want to bring in our prior year to date. So I click on that. It's going to ask me, what do I want to calculate the prior year to date on? It's going to be our invoice amount. And we'll keep that as prior year to date. Click on apply, and there is our prior year to date. So obviously, if I go down to 2019, this data will move over. We don't have anything for 2018. But that's how easy it is to bring in these kind of comparison functions. And we could add in, you know, last 6 months, last month, however you want to look at it. You need to add in a variance type column, right? Say we want to have a quick calculation that compares this year versus last year. Again, I add in a custom formula, come in here, and I just reference those values. And very similarly to like Excel, I'm just writing in, or I'm just pasting in these values here of sales amount versus last year. Click on apply, and there's our variance. So easy to kind of build out and get to the data that you need. Now at this point, you have a couple different options too. I could say, hey, I'm good with this tabular style report. Maybe I want to present this more visually. So I could come in here and I can say, you know what, let's turn this into a chart. Now we have sort of this bar chart that doesn't look quite as friendly, but we could go ahead and change the view of this. And you can notice that we can change this easily to say maybe a horizontal bar chart. And this kind of gives you a comparison of here's all your customers, here's what they're doing this year, here's what they did last year, and this is their variance, right? So you can present the data this way. That's an option if you wanted to. So a couple different ways to kind of just present this data. And you'll notice that as part of the chart, there is a lot of options in terms of chart types. So you could even get down to just sort of a heat map. If we wanted to just focus in on one particular metric, you have that ability too as well. So you can kind of play around with which chart makes sense. Now, from this standpoint, you have the ability to kind of publish this out the way that you want. You could say, you know what, I want to save this. We'll just call this sales bar report. And now maybe this is the report that I want it to be accessible by the end user. Now, when the end user comes in and accesses this report, this is the view that the end user would see. And now that end user could say, you know what, I want to look at only data for, again, maybe it's just a handful of sales reps. That's it. And here's that information. And I can see, oh, there's some questions that I have. So that sales rep now accessing this report, they could also too double click on one of these fields, and it's going to give them still that line item transaction view to see exactly what makes up those numbers. So again, that sales rep has trust in the data because now they can see exactly what makes up those numbers. So if there's a sales invoice that's missing, they can come in here, review that, and see for themselves. Okay, I think I'm going to go for maybe 2 more minutes here. There's a lot of capability from an analytics, from a reporting standpoint. You can go crazy with the visualizations, and this could be nested onto a dashboard if you wanted. But that's the process of building a report. Very simple. You're dragging and dropping over your element, the fields that you need, and then you're choosing how you want to visualize it. We also showcase sort of how it can be published, but there's other ways that you can publish data as well. And so one of those examples I wanted to highlight is the fact that you can build a report pack. And think of a report pack as sort of what this is typically used for is month-end financials. And you want to have a view of all maybe it's your P&L. You also want to have sort of a high-level summary of how the business is doing, and this gets automatically delivered. So you can set up a report pack, and this can include as many reports as you need. And the view of that, you can customize based on how you want it. So you can introduce a cover page, for example, and you can format this the way that you want. There's a table of contents, and then you can set up this report pack. So again, you have this high-level statement, this high-level overview here. There's also some text that kind of gives you some information about how the business was performing. You have a summary P&L. Then you have sort of a broken out P&L. That's combining 2 different companies as well as one by product line. So you can set up this report pack pretty much any way that you want. That can be set up to go as frequently as you want. And you also have the ability to set up these report packs to be automatically delivered in email, based on a scheduled time and date. But you also have the ability to set up a conditional alert. So meaning maybe you have an AR report that you built that showcases all your outstanding AR, but you only want it to be delivered if certain customers' balances are too high. You could set up a report pack that goes out every day, but it would only get delivered if their balance is too high. You can have that flexibility. So again, we reduce the amount of noise that's coming from here, and you would only get a report if you need to action on it. Last thing I just want to touch on here is our connectivity too. So I mentioned that we have the ability to connect to many different data sets. Example of that is what we're showcasing here. And so all that kind of reporting capability that I showed before, in here, you can apply that reporting capability against any other data set, whether it's SQL Server, Excel, API connections, Salesforce, all these different systems we're able to report on. And for example, I took data from an API, for example, and I did a map type reporting of sales by city or top cities here. And so you'll notice that we have this this view here that you even are able to present. So if you need to present the data in a map type fashion, you're able to. That's what I wanted to cover off. So again, out of the box, a lot of analytics, a lot of reports, a lot of calculations that come and are turned on. And so there's a lot of content that we showcase from financial sales and procurement, as well as inventory. Then we showcase what does it look like to build. You see that it's drag and drop. If you can operate a pivot table, you can operate this to build out a report. There's time value functions that make it easy to do comparison time periods. And finally, you see that our connectivity is pretty strong in terms of what data you can report on. All right. So going back to the slides, and I'll try to go through this quickly. There are 3 different bundles in terms of how it's packaged. And there is the standard, there's the advanced, and the premium. Standard really gets you access to sort of the financial AR and AP modules. You'll notice that has 1 designer, 5 consumers. The designers, that report builder element that I showed, the consumers is that end user view. So this is sort of that entry level plan. Doesn't give you access to the purchasing or the sales data. If you want access to all modules, you would want to be interested in the advanced. And now this gives you access to all your data coming from your Sage ERP. If you have less than 5 companies or less, you would be slotted in here. You have 2 designers, 10 consumers. This is the amount of data that we host. So don't get scared that if your database is 30 gigabytes, doesn't mean we're looking at your database as 30 gigabytes. It just means that whatever we store, it's typically in the order of magnitude of about 1/3 or 1/4. So if you have say a 30 gig database, it's probably gonna be 10 gigabytes in our system. And a real big difference between say advanced and premium is if you have a lot of companies, you're probably gonna go on to premium. If you have other data source connections, so you wanna start including maybe 3 or 4 other data source connections, you probably wanna go to premium. If it's 1 or 2, you're probably gonna wanna stick with advanced. But that's typically how we're bundled. You can always follow up with Brainsell here to get more detailed questions regarding pricing as well.
Absolutely.
All right, that's
awesome.
Kind of what I want to go over, and I guess now we can open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and open the floor up for some questions, and we have a lot of really good ones here, so I'll start from the top. Rich, what versions of Sage 100 does this work with?
It's sort of similar to what Sage supports. So it's I believe it's the last 2 versions is what we have.
Okay. So if you currently, Sage has 2021 out. So if you're on version 2019, 2020, or 2021, then you are in good shape. Otherwise, we should talk about an upgrade.
Yeah, and I know personally we had 1 customer that had 2017. We had to do just a little bit more work. We were able to get them up as well, but yes, by default we're supporting the newer versions.
Got it. Okay. All right. The next question: we have other data in a database. Can Sage data and analytics be used for dashboards that include this data?
100%. So, showcasing or if you recall that screen that had all those different database or all those data source connectors, SQL Server, if that's the data source, or if it's an Oracle or Access database, whichever database source it is, we can connect to it and have a dashboard against that.
Perfect. Okay. Next question, can you talk to the key differences between this and other BI technologies? So like Sage, intelligence reporting, something like that. How would this differ from a product like that or any other Excel-based tool that's out there, BizNet being another one?
Well, when you say Excel-based, I think that's one aspect. We are cloud-based. So that's a key differentiator. I would say our connectivity, you saw that we have very deep, high-level connectivity. Our data management, so if you need to do transformations to the data, you want to merge data sets, all that kind of data work, we have a very extensive tool set that I did not showcase on that. Intuitive, our platform is incredibly easy to start building reports. Typically people start building high-level reports in a matter of days after implementation. So again, time to value I think is very important. It's not a hard product to learn, as well as time value functions that I mentioned. We have an extensive array of functions that are really meant for sort of that time series analysis, making that process easy. And honestly, our reporting platform is it's cloud-based. You're not relying on Excel, and makes the data viewable anywhere.
Got it. Thank you. And your mention of cloud-based, it answers the next question, which was asking if this is able to be hosted on a customer's own in-house server environment. But I take it that this is strictly true cloud solution, so no servers involved.
That is correct. All cloud-based. Yep.
Got it. Perfect. All right. The next question was around if you are combining data from multiple ERPs or data sources, how does Sage Data and Analytics manage eliminations or consolidations?
So we report on the data that's entered into your Sage ERPs. So however that data is recorded against those particular companies, we're going to mirror how that data is recorded. Now, the logic, if you want to model that logic within our platform in terms of there's specific ways that you handle eliminations, that can be modeled. As well as if there's external ways of tracking your eliminations and you want to bring that external way of tracking it, we can bring that data in as well.
Got it. Perfect. And then we have just one last question, and you kind of touched on it before when you were speaking to the ease of use and how quickly reports can get stood up here, but we had somebody ask, so are we able to build the reports ourselves, or would you recommend we hire consultants to do that? But sounds like it's pretty easy for, yeah.
It's typically, we see a high mix of both, because some of our customers say, hey, you know what, I don't have time to build, to learn the platform. I don't have time to build reports at all. And maybe they have a very highly formatted needs. Sometimes that can become a consulting request. Whereas we have on the other side of the spectrum, we have, we'll go to our customers and they're like, oh, wow, this is easy to pick up, easy to learn. Oh, I can do everything myself. And they just run with the platform. And then it's not a high level consulting engagement at that point.
Got it. Okay. That sounds pretty cut and dry. Thank you for that. And folks, again, if you have any more questions, we still have a couple more minutes, so feel free to throw them in the question box. We do have one last poll, if you don't mind. Last question here, I promise. So if we can throw that up on the screen. Based on what you learned today, would you like us to have your Brainsell customer success manager contact you right away, arrange a product demo for your company, send some more information, and then follow up later on, or leave you alone and let you just kind of stew over this for now? I think we've got almost all of the answers. Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. I think that about wraps it up for us today. So again, Rich, thank you so much for joining us and for going through this presentation. And I want to thank all of you for attending. Again, you're going to be receiving a recording of this presentation in your inbox tomorrow morning. And additionally, we'll be following up with you each individually next week or so to make sure that all of your questions have been answered. And everyone, I hope you have a great rest of your week. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.